So moving on to the second question, what makes it easy to make and to keep friends? Well, most people said that it takes time to make friends. Only one person said that she made friends straight away. People met their friends in different ways. Sometimes people were introduced by other friends, but mostly people met their friends in places like college, school, day centres, or by sharing a living space or living close to each other. And basically what all of these environments have in common is that they're places where people regularly bump into each other. So that enabled people to build up, getting to know somebody over time and slowly build up a friendship by having kind of repeated bumping into people and having a chance to chat with them. The other thing which people talked about helping to keep friendships going was being similar to their friends, so sharing similar interests, which allowed people to connect and also to spend time together. So now, looking at the last two questions together, what people found difficult about making friends and how they overcame those difficulties in day-to-day life. The first difficulty that people talked about were other people's negative attitudes about learning disability. 6 out of the 8 participants talked about having very difficult experiences of being made to feel very different from everyone else, and having had this message repeated several times over their lifetime, sometimes in very upsetting ways. So that caused a problem. Obviously, if another person has a prejudice, it is going to be very difficult for somebody with a learning disability to make friends with them if they wanted to. But this worked in another way to sort of hinder friendships, because some people talked about having kind of bad feelings about themselves, or having the idea of not being normal then leading to a feeling of nervousness when talking to other people or when trying to build friendships. And it also made people wary, and some talked about finding it difficult to trust people because they've been treated so badly in the past. So some people talked about things they did that helped with this. Some people really had a deep sense of common humanity. So that means the idea that everybody's the same. One participant, for example, said, "We've all got the same blood." So this idea that everybody's deep down is the same and every human faces challenges and difficulties in life, that really helped people to sort of have a sense of connection. Other people talked about standing up for yourself when people treated them badly or said things which were rude or wrong. And then some people talked about how they coped with the negative feelings that these experiences lead to. So people talked about different ways of taking time for themselves, spending time in nature. Some people talked about meditating or looking at nice pictures. And another woman talked about how she likes to list things that she likes to remind her of the positive things in life as well. Some people also thought that inclusion strategies were useful for changing people's negative attitudes, and by that they meant including people with learning disabilities in mainstream schools, or having people with learning disabilities living in the community and not living in hospitals. The second difficulty that people talked about was having negative past experiences of friendship. So friendships that had gone wrong in the past. 2 people, for example, talked about having had friends who stole from them. Another woman talked about a time where a friend of hers had given her a dress away to strangers so that she no longer felt safe in her own home. And some people talked about receiving nasty text messages from their friends. Other past experiences that were disappointing for people were when they met somebody who'd promised to keep in touch with them and carry on a friendship, and then that person had failed to do so. And all of those things then made it a little bit more difficult to open up to future friendships with other people. And people were not really sure what to do about this, how to regain trust in other people. So mainly when they talked about these experiences, they talked about dealing with the negative emotions that arose from them in the same way that they did before. So like with meditation or walking in nature, or just taking time for themselves. Related to this second difficulty is the third difficulty that people talked about, and that was knowing who to trust. So people who'd had negative past experiences of their trust being broken found it more difficult to trust in the future, but other people also talked about not being able to gauge in the beginning whether somebody's trustworthy or not. And that idea was related to keeping safe in public spaces when you're meeting new people, and the idea that you want to keep yourself safe. Again, this was quite a difficult one, and people didn't really know how to deal with this. So how can they learn how to trust? That was one of the biggest questions that came out of the research, which didn't have a readily available answer. The fourth kind of difficulty that people talked about was being able to gauge where different boundaries are in relationships, or to know where different lines are with different people. The most common problem people talked about with this was knowing whether a relationship was a friendship or whether it could potentially move into a romantic relationship, and being able to sense when it was okay to test that boundary and when it wasn't. People also talked about difficulties in setting boundaries with their friends in terms of what makes for appropriate behaviour. So what you're willing to do for your friend and what you're not willing to do for them, or who gets to decide what TV programme you're watching. There was a sense that decisions should be made equally, and if there was any kind of unfairness, then that had to be rectified. And people also talked about having arguments with each other, and very often having arguments and then making up by apologising if somebody felt that they'd done something wrong, or sometimes the argument led to the end of the friendship. So to help with trying to sense where these different lines are in friendships and relationships, some people talked about asking other people that they trust for advice. So that could be a parent or a support worker that they particularly trusted, or sometimes a minister, anybody who they felt was very trustworthy and that would be able to give them good advice. Another problem that people talked about was difficulties in social settings. So when out and about socialising in public, some people found that they were worried about keeping safe, and that they felt that they had to be aware of everything that was going on around them all the time, which made it quite stressful. And other people found settings where there's lots of people, like a noisy party for example, a little bit overwhelming, and so they felt that they wanted to avoid those situations. The last problem that people discussed was shyness. Half the people I talked to talked about shyness getting in their way of meeting new people and making friends in the beginning. But people had different ways of overcoming that. Some people talked about the need to persevere, so continually going to social clubs, for example, and trying to stay calm and to get the courage to go and talk to people, and just continually going back and trying that until they felt more comfortable. Another person talked about using the tools that they learned through their person-centred planning process to help them overcome shyness. And some people talked of just getting more confident as they got older and had a little bit more life experience. So that's basically what I found out about what friendship means to people, the difficulties that they have in making friends, and what makes making friends easy. I hope you found it interesting. I'd really welcome any comments that you have, or if you have any questions, then you can contact me by email or by phone. Thank you.